Awesome. Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us today, Mary. Mary is the head of marketing at Map My Customers, a tool that helps to simplify sellers' day-to-day, capturing data and service team activity from anywhere. She was also previously the marketing strategist at Gorilla 76. We're super pumped to have you today here for Fireside Chat with Demand Collective. How are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome. I'm really excited to be here. Your tagline is perfect on your website, by the way. It's like it's the community you wish you had, or like the school you wish you had when you first got into marketing. It's 100% true. When you like first get thrown into B2B marketing, you're just so desperate for something. Like, tell me how to do anything.
Yeah. Demand gen's funny because I think one of the things we hear most often from members is that they're on an island, right? They're usually the lone
Yes.
practitioner. And, that's kind of what we're trying to do. And that's why we're excited to have you because we know you know exactly what's happening. And so we're wondering if maybe you could start us off by telling us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your journey, how you got to this, head of marketing role at Map My Customers and kind of everything that precedes that.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. So I started out, I'll take it like all the way back, like right when I graduated college. So I graduated with an English degree. I immediately went into a PhD program actually in English and American literature. I thought I was going to be a college professor, and then quickly realized no one really cares about anything like college professors do or write. So I was like, as much as I really want to have my entire career hinge on research papers that like 5 people will read, I think I'll pass and especially get into mountains and mountains of debt. So decided to switch it up. I took a few like freelance gigs doing editing, writing, and then found a full-time job doing technical writing for an industrial company called Spraying Systems. So they're big B2B private, roughly $1 billion in revenue. And I came on to help onboard new sales reps. So they only hired people who graduated with engineering degrees. So they know a lot about engineering and nothing about spray nozzles. So my job was to kind of fill that gap there. Quickly moved into kind of like a marketing and business development role in a really small part of that company. Saw a lot of success there, especially in COVID. So COVID hits, I'm there for like, 3 years, just kind of plugging along as if anybody here was like a marketing generalist or marketing specialist for a company making, 55 to 60K a year and just like, updating sales brochures, a lot about what I did day to day. And then once COVID hit, I was like, okay, this is the opportunity. This is where marketing can shine because our sales team was almost fully outside. So going into companies, making face-to-face visits, all of a sudden that is like totally shut down. So I had a bunch of ideas, executed on some of them, caught the attention of corporate marketing there, moved into corporate side marketing, and then quickly got picked up by Gorilla 76, which is a agency that specializes in B2B industrial companies. So I was there for about 18 months, had an absolute blast. That's where I learned a lot of the demand gen strategy, but like actually putting it into practice and into words. Because like, I don't know, when I was doing some fun stuff at Spring Systems, it was really great. And like, I saw a lot of success there, but I didn't really know like how to articulate why it was successful. So coming into Gorilla 76, I was able to really like put it into practice in like a repeatable, scalable way. And then just from my network and from posting on LinkedIn, met Matt Sniff, who is the founder here at Map My Customers. And we were just kind of pinging marketing ideas back and forth because he was just like, hey, we're really struggling with marketing right now. Can we just talk about ideas? And it was really fun. And I really liked how he thought about product and marketing and the future of what software as a service companies are going to look like. Like we were in agreement on a lot of that. And so eventually he was like, all right, do you want to get brought in? And the rest is history. Here I am.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
Founders are so instrumental and sort of foundational in that journey. Like the relationship you have with the founder is so key, especially in startups, to how you market, the resources you have, and that support, right? Especially when the results you have are often reported up to the board. Like you need to have that unified team.
Totally agree with that. Yeah. That's one of the harder parts too. Like I almost feel bad when people ask, I get asked a lot on LinkedIn, which is, hey, like, how did you get leadership buy-in on this stuff? Like, how did you get your leadership team to listen? I'm like, well, I wouldn't have been hired. Like I wouldn't have even come on if they weren't listening. You know what I mean? So I had it even before I was brought on. They were like, we just want you to do your thing. So it's not
Yeah.
the best answer. It's not the answer everyone wants to hear, but finding people who get it early is pretty critical.
It's the real answer though. I mean, I saw you mentioned before we started here the demand gen sessions with like Chris Walker and Refine Labs. And a couple years ago, I was doing some consulting and I'd asked Chris, I said, how do you convince people or clients or whoever that this is the way, and he said, you don't, you
Yeah.
search out the people who already get it and who are already on that page. Uh,
Yeah.
Old answer. I like that though.
Yeah, I mean, it is true too. Like, I think I heard that episode actually where he was like, you don't. And that just like hit me so hard. That's when I was at the big company, working in corporate marketing, trying to do stuff. Everyone's like, no, we do trade shows and email campaigns. And I was like, I think we should not be doing that. And yeah, once you get into a company like, Girl 76, of course, was bought in, but even their clients come in knowing exactly what they're going to get and they want it. So like coming into a company knowing the leadership is hungry for it. So I love Dave Gerhardt's like, don't work for a CEO who doesn't get marketing. I think they can like not get marketing, but still be hungry for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, that's a great way to view it. So with that context, like head going into this new role, right? Head of marketing at my customers, like how did you decide where to start? Like that's kind of one of the common questions I hear is it's like we all have sort of the playbooks that we know and love, and we kind of say, like, cool, these are the things I sort of prioritize in terms of what to do, what channels to look at. But in
Mm-hmm.
those first 90 days being so crucial to establishing your credibility with peers, how much buy-in you're going to get from different departments, and then
Totally.
deciding channels to start building. Like where do you start?
Yeah. So, starting in two ways. So I'll kind of take it from like the quantitative perspective and then the qualitative. So quantitative, just really wanted to know from like, your napkin math, what go-to-market motions are working or not working right now. So Map My Customers is a Series A startup, so a little bit smaller, still growing. So they really only had two big go-to-market motions. It was kind of that top funnel, high volume SEO, gated content, get email addresses, get them into a nurture sequence, and then, just slowly nurture them over time until they become a customer. So that was number one. That was on the digital side. And then two was just like cold outbound, like cold calling, cold emailing, getting people into a demo. So really just running the basic math there. Okay. How many people are actually clicking on these CTAs? Are they turning into leads, opportunities, and customers? If so, is it worth it? Are we getting, what's our CAC? What's our payback? Looking at it from both sides, and just found both motions were very inefficient, which I'm sure isn't surprising to anybody listening to this. I think we were getting like a 0.5 to maybe 4% conversion rate on, some really good ones. So just, pouring money into channels that just weren't working.
Yeah.
So that was the first big thing I did, was just quantitative. Here's our go-to-market motions. Neither of them are working right now. So here's where, coming from the agency side and running demand gen for other companies before, here's where I've seen us win. So then qualitative, really getting down into where do we want to win. So this is really comes from your founder and CEO, like what is the vision for this company? So Map My Customers, I'll give you a super specific example just so you can put it into context. Map My Customers can be bought by individual sales reps, just as like, license you have on your phone, just like anything you would purchase and download, or it can be a team. So big enterprise team. Most of our customers are in the team side. Most of our profits are coming from there. Most of the revenue is coming from there. So, but interestingly, marketing was measured on individual licenses as part of their metrics. So I was like, well, that's the first thing to go. Like, I don't think marketing should be measured on, we shouldn't be really, because we're, Series A, limited resources, we shouldn't be putting any effort. I mean, they were probably like, they're like less than 10% of our revenue stream right now. So, heavy into enterprise side. So that was like big first thing. And
Yeah.
then from the qualitative side, interviewing who are our enterprise customers right now? What problems does our solution solve that are really specific to them? And then this is a unique one. I don't know if I've heard it really verbalized when folks in marketing talk about customer research from a qualitative perspective, but there's certain catalysts that happen when a buyer is looking for a solution like yours. So like, what happened? Why did they finally decide they needed something like what they think you offer or what they actually ended up buying? So finding those two things were really critical. And that kind of like pushed the way toward, our positioning, how we were going to reach these folks, what channels we were going to use, how we were going to talk to them, like at a large scale. So really everything was driven from that qualitative piece there.
Yeah, that's it's especially I think at these sort of Series A where you're doing a lot of the messaging work and value prop work yourself as a marketer. It's instrumental, right? Like it's key to everything you're doing. And if the messaging sucks, then the campaign's not, no matter how well it's planned, it's not going to do great, right?
Yeah. And that like, God, it's so hard to like articulate that as a marketer to like your CEO who's
Yeah.
like, why is our cost per click or cost per lead like $500 or something like that? And it's like, well, because we don't really know who we're marketing to. So the message isn't resonating. It's not because LinkedIn as a channel doesn't work. It very clearly works for a lot of companies. So often it's not the channel. It's like you just said, it's the message.
Do you feel like you've had an opportunity over the last 100 days to really hone in on that?
Yeah, that part has been really fun actually. So I'll talk a little bit about how I did that actually. So when I was pulling out problems, we highlighted like a few problems. And if anybody here has outside sales reps or sales reps, these problems will not be that surprising. So one of the big ones was sales leaders felt like they didn't have a lot of insight into what reps do every day because they're out in the field and they're just like kind of flying blind. Maybe they don't have a CRM, or the CRM that they're using, they're not really using it the way that you're supposed to use it. So that was one big like resonating piece. And from there, you pull out the features and those value props of that feature that answer that problem. So one of the really good ones was, reporting and analytics. So if you want to, you can do like an activity report for a rep. So that's the feature that answers that problem. So then pulling out the value prop from there, which is finally get insights into sales activities that drive revenue, just throwing out an example. So that's your value prop, that's your ad. And then they get taken to a page that's your solution. So your solution is that reporting and analytics tool inside of Map My Customers.
That is a robust start for sure. For
Yeah.
100 days, I guess you've been busy.
Yeah, it was I'm not gonna lie. So like just now is like everything's kind of starting to run on like a fairly consistent basis where I don't feel like I'm just heads down all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of like, oh, now what? Now what do I do?
Yeah. So, finding that sort of that messaging and that value prop, and this might be a bit too early, but have you started in terms of like alignment across departments, making sure that sort of customer success, sales, marketing are all sort of speaking in the same lexicon and taxonomy as prospects and aligned on those value props in their outreach and in their retention efforts?
Yeah, that's a awesome question. So I'll answer it from the sales side first, and then we'll go into customer success. So from the sales side, sales actually already had a pretty decent narrative. Like they were already hitting on some of the major value props, and they were very good at extracting value.
Mhm.
And I think that speaks a lot to the founder here, Matt Sniff. All our sales reps have been here for like, 2 to 5 years. So there's not a lot of turnover. So they speak to a lot of different customers and they pulled out the value props early, and we're really good at extracting them in demos, which I got to listen to the recordings. So that helped me a ton too. So sales was pretty easy. Just like, how can I help you? How can I continue to help you? And theirs was really get us more inbound leads. The inbound leads close faster. They're more knowledgeable. So whatever you can do to get us inbound leads and help us like continue to hone that narrative, the better. So that was pretty easy. Then moving to customer success really needed help with retention. So I would say about 80% of my effort is spent on new customer acquisition, and then the other 20% is spent on retention.
Mm-hmm. That's you're spreading a wide breadth there of efforts, and that's amazing. So you could kind of jumping back to when you were talking about qualitative insights. You've been really public about this journey as a head of marketing on LinkedIn, and it's been really cool to sort of watch you post about like the updates on, the different challenges you're facing, some of what you've already talked about in terms of defining the messaging and positioning. You mentioned that you're not a big fan of software-based attribution, right?
Yeah.
It's such a hot topic, right? The hybrid software, like I had a marketing ops background when I first started in demand gen. I was like,
Nice.
software. And then I got more experience and I was like, all right, Brian, you got to chill out. But how do you sort of strike that balance between, one, taking all of that qualitative data and synthesizing it into actionable data that you can use for deciding, what channels to hit and deciding who to hit, when to hit them, and vice versa. When, maybe I don't think you cut out software entirely, but what does that role look like in a world where we want to hear directly from prospects, what drove them to come to us?
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely software is not out of it entirely. We have HubSpot as our marketing automation platform. So that's how we do most of our attribution kind of reports. So when I say I don't like software-based attribution, I think it's that I don't like it as the only tool to measure a channel's efficacy. So a podcast, for example, we didn't have a "How did you hear about us" field on our high intent forms before I came on. So there is like almost zero direct attribution from a podcast, right? Like no one's going to come and I guess like click an Apple Spotify link and like convert on your demo page. Like it's just not going to happen. So it would seem like the podcast should get shut down. But what we found when we started adding a "How did you hear about us" is a lot of people saw value in the podcast. And one of my favorite strategies that this was Map My Customers before Mary Keough entered. They were doing a lot of customer interviews on their podcast. And that helped a ton because people could hear directly, not only a customer story, so how they execute on their sales process, how they measure their field sales teams, all that good stuff, but also the value that they get out of Map My Customers. So there was a lot of value in the podcast that just wasn't being leveraged. So going back to your original question, which is why I don't like software-based attribution, that would be the main reason. Is I don't think it provides accurate data on the channels that are actually driving the results.
Yeah.
And then what happens usually if you talk to CEO, CFO, somebody like that, they want to know, which channels are driving this amount of money, right? And you just can't look at marketing like that. And I think the more that you can educate people who are asking those questions, the better, because what happens to what do I do with my podcast right now? I do a 45-minute recording with a customer interview, or I'm doing some kind of thought leadership piece with my head of sales. That audio recording becomes 4 to 5 clips. Those 4 to 5 clips get put into organic and paid social. It gets put on YouTube. And then from there, it might become a blog. That blog might become individual social media posts. So to think that the podcast and then separating all those pieces out it just doesn't really make sense when you look at it in that way. Because to pull out any one of those pieces and say, what's the direct ROI of each of these individual tactics would not be a fair assessment of the content piece as a whole.
Yeah, I think every revenue marketer, demand marketer, marketing leader, et cetera, has had to have that conversation with the CEO, with the CFO, whoever, and beyond just the, qualitative stuff around like, how did you hear about us? How do you strike that balance of justifying channels that might come across as simply a cost center that aren't probably going to be the flashy pieces, right? That someone distinctly remembers as being what led them to you, but maybe it was something they saw that led them to explore more. How do you justify those cost centers, even though it plays a significant part in the grander strategy?
Yeah, so I think if anybody's looking for other resources on this, Refine Labs does a really good job of articulating this in their revenue R&D framework. So that's one where you have a standard process for a go-to-market motion. So I'll use the podcast again, just since it's top of mind right now. The podcast is part of our go-to-market motion. And from there, I've created a standard operating procedure that includes the podcast becomes a blog, 4 to 5 micro clips, and then mini social media posts. So that's what comes out of the podcast. And then where do those get distributed? So it might get distributed on paid LinkedIn, organic LinkedIn, on the website, or shared via email. Maybe we'll put it in an email newsletter. So from there, that podcast is now the go-to-market motion. So everything underneath there, the mini content pieces that come from it, and the distribution channels that come from it are now all in this box. So when we're looking at, tying back, if someone said, oh, I heard about you on social media, or I heard about you on a podcast, I'm actually giving credit to that entire block of a go-to-market motion. So I'm not going to take out any piece of that, because as I'm seeing the flywheel keep turning and all of those channels are churning out results, but I know that the podcast was like the main pillar that all of that came from. Okay, then that is now a go-to-market motion. So when we start toying with, let's say, paid YouTube, for example, but all that paid YouTube is going to come from product demo videos that my founder does. That's something that we're experimenting with right now. Mm-hmm. So now that is its own pillar. It's going to be product videos from our founder. So founder-led product series. So now everything underneath that is going to be part of that standard operating procedure. So none of those pieces are going to get credit alone. It's going to all go to the box.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love that. That's repurposing and really sort of extending the mileage of those core sort of flagship components of a marketing strategy and campaign are really, really important for making right now. Like that's the thing you hear from everyone, right? Do more with less. And
totally.
I mean, looking at like the sort of cost-effective ways to make that one video go way further is the right way, right? And it's also
100%.
an echo chamber of those value props,
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, I'm so glad you said that, because it sounds like I'm doing a lot, right? It sounds like, oh my God, she's like doing so many things. I really only focused on like 2 or 3 efforts, and then just focused on what you said, just squeezing every last drop out of those big major efforts that I can. So the customer interviews, for example, fueled all of my features pages. My features pages are fueling the paid LinkedIn ads that we're running. So we don't have like special landing pages. Like you guys can go to my LinkedIn page and check out my ads right now. It's just going to our features pages. So just making sure, like we said, doing more with less can be as simple as finding those 1 or 2 big channels that you just want to like double down on.
Yeah. Have any channels, so podcast, it sounds like, is one of the channels that's standing out. Any other channels you feel like are really jumping at you right now?
Yeah. The podcast is huge. And then LinkedIn as a distribution channel is probably our most successful right now.
Yeah. As what's been the most surprising thing that you sort of felt or experienced or learned in the first 100 days?
Yeah, so just going back to my background, so I come from industrial and manufacturing marketing, and the process is very different there. So someone is buying in my cases, everything that I was helping to market and sell was a physical product. So once you buy the product, you have it and it's yours, and you can come back if you need more or need a different type of that product, right? So the sales team were not necessarily as responsible for new customer acquisition, which is different from B2B SaaS. They're almost solely responsible for new customer acquisition. In the industrial manufacturing side, it's almost all like management. So do you need a new set of, spray nozzles? Do you need another industrial oven, for example? So a lot of it is just the salesperson really owns that account for the entire life cycle of the account. So moving into B2B SaaS, as soon as that customer signs on the dotted line, they're moved to customer success. So they now have this customer success team. That's who's managing them. And you really don't interface with the sales rep too often anymore. So I think the customer life cycle after purchase was the most surprising, just how important activation and retention is to success in software as a service. So, like I said, physical product, bought, sold, we get credit, revenue in the door, check the box. Marketing has to really own that whole process from when they come in the door, when they start using the product. So making sure they're taking advantage of the features that are important to them, and then making sure we're retaining them as long as possible.
Yeah, yeah. Do you ever feel like, there's that what's the adage? It's sort of like when you're working in a startup, you either have to have patience and it'll cost less, but you have to have patience, or you can do it quicker, but it's going to cost a lot of money, right? Like
Yeah, totally.
it's
Um, yeah,
sorry,
it's so funny you mentioned that. That's exactly how I positioned my budget plan to my CEO. I like had 3 tiers. So I was like, okay, here's like maximum growth tier. So if you want to like see results as fast as possible, here's the budget. If you want to see results in, 6 to 12 months, here's the middle budget. If you're ready to like take 18 to 24 months to see results. So exactly what you just said. And yeah, I think that's a really smooth way to put it. So
wow,
it's
I love
helpful.
that. I haven't heard very often of people giving out multiple budgets. That's pretty
Yeah.
great. That's a good what would sales say? They'd say that's good objection handling.
Yeah, internal marketing.
Yeah. So I think let's see. I had a question that I wanted to ask you. I did some digging on your LinkedIn post.
Oh, nice.
So just in your own words, you said it's still difficult for most B2B companies to conceptualize that marketing can drive business impact. Right? Now that's a complicated one, right? Do you feel like, and I don't disagree with you, just for clarity, but how do
Yeah.
you feel that's impacted B2B marketing as a whole? Like, do you feel, in a way it's left it in many ways antiquated, sort of behind D2C? Do you feel like it makes people sort of apprehensive about change or creativity in marketing? Like, what do you think some of that impact is?
Yeah, I think all of the things that you just said. But what I've seen, and I have a lot of empathy for leaders in B2B organizations who want marketing to drive change or don't understand that marketing can drive change. Because what I think is unique in B2B marketing is you can get away with a lot. So there's a lot of people who might be in a leadership role or a director role who, when you really like peel back the layers, they haven't done that much because they've just kind of been sales support. So if you check the boxes enough times and you make enough people happy in, a semi-large organization, you can get up to a pretty decent level. You can get up to like a director VP level. So I think the the broadness of experience and the broadness of like application and execution is so much wider in B2B marketing than, even D2C, that I think that's why people are so apprehensive, because they might have tried something. So we'll throw out SEO as an example. Maybe, and this used to happen all the time in industrial and manufacturing. They'd be like, oh yeah, we tried a blog, it didn't work. Or we tried Facebook ads, it didn't work.
Yeah.
And then when we go back and see it, and Yeah, a direct response ad in Facebook saying, do you want to buy a $200,000 packaging machine? Yes, shocker, that didn't work, you know? So just kind of like educating them and just trying to, I guess, like pick out the snake oil salesman. I hate to say it that way, but I think there's a lot in
Here's
B2B
the lie, though,
marketing.
you know?
Yeah. So that's just one of the things that I've observed and why it's so hard for leaders to conceptualize that marketing can drive results. It's that they probably got burned before by somebody who maybe said they could drive results or on that side. So they want marketing to drive results and they didn't, or B, they just don't understand. They just don't understand why marketing is important.
Yeah, yeah. I think you're totally spot on there. I think one other important thing to consider too is B2B is so industry agnostic. Like so much of marketing and sales is shaped by the companies you're selling to, right? So for example, I was most recently at Upflex, commercial real estate space, right?
Nice.
Completely shaped by relationships to brokers, right? It shapes and colors everything you do. And so I think it's like marketing plays absolutely a big role there in that sort of industry, but it's all, subtext to brokers. How do we make brokers happy? How do we not rock that boat, but also make prospects, customers happy, all that sort of thing, And I think, you mentioned your previous roles, that industry informs so much of that.
Yeah. I think it could be, you just got me thinking when you mentioned the broker thing, because we worked with a lot of distributors in the manufacturing space. It's
Mhm.
also a lot of like, some companies just don't have a strategy.
Yep.
Like when you ask them what their business strategy is, they're like, I don't know, get more money.
Yeah.
Like, okay, how are we going to do that? Where are our big profit centers, stuff like that. So I think that's a super difficult struggle in marketing too, because that's what marketing does. It executes on a business strategy, right? So it takes, if you tell me, you want to grow the food and beverage division by 30% in the next 3 years, boom, marketing can start executing on that vision. But without a vision, it's like, I guess I will just keep editing brochures and sending out email campaigns.
Yeah. At that point, it's like not even thematically. I'm a big fan of like, so I also went to school for English. And so I'm like,
Nice.
I run a campaign. I'm like, I want some thematic elements tying all these pieces together.
Right?
And so, I feel bad when people are put in that position to where it is reactive and you don't get to be proactive and it is become really just a sales support role and you become essentially marketing ops with no autonomy. Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
So I think we've got just about, 9 minutes here. I figure thank you again for taking the time today.
Oh, heck yeah.
We've got two questions here from some of our peeps. We've got Christine. She said,
Nice.
what tactics specifically are you using to determine the three options, specifically aggressive versus longer term conversion?
As far as the three options. Oh,
But
budgeting. Oh, that was good. Okay. So I peeled back the layers so I know what I think my marketing strategy wants to be. Talked with Matt for a few times, got to talk with the CEO. We want to hit enterprise, had a couple customer interviews. So I was like, okay, perfect. Build the strategy from there. So what we need to do is we need a killer narrative. We need a better strategic narrative. We need to hone our positioning and we need to decide what segments we're going after. Because at the time I came on, it was just like, well, all of outside sales, of course. And it's like, we don't have the budget to hit all of outside sales. So let's hone in on a specific segment. So I would bucket that into like foundation. And then from there, we want to create content that that segment cares about. We want to distribute that content in the channels where they spend time. And then we want to analyze and iterate each step of that process. So when I determined the tactics that I wanted, so it was like, if I want to be super aggressive, I want to create as much content as possible. And I want that content to be in as many places as possible. So it was like, I want to do a podcast. I want a full-time content person to write all of the blogs and all of the landing pages for our social media efforts. I want to distribute in YouTube, Google, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, if we can. So it was like every single channel we could possibly do. And then how do I want to analyze and iterate on results? Do I need a marketing ops person? Do I feel like I can handle stuff like that on my own? So when I was doing tactics related to the budget options, it was, what's the big highest growth plan? What are all of the content channels I want, or content pieces I want to create? What channels do I want to be in? And then each step down from there was just peeling back certain layers. So in the middle tier, it was, okay, let's just do LinkedIn, Facebook, and maybe Google. So Google is kind of up in the air for us right now. We have paused dollar ads there for now, but that was like a testing ground. And then the lowest option was like just LinkedIn. This is Mary doing it all herself, no help whatsoever. So it's like that's our only distribution channel. Yeah, so then that's a really great follow-up, Christine. So what I did was say, okay, I have a content person who I'm thinking of. This is how much it's going to cost us per month. Podcast, we have an agency. This is how much that costs us per month. Distribution, okay, how much is it going to cost us on LinkedIn to hit this audience enough times that I feel comfortable with it? Same with Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Google. And then again, just peeling back those layers from there.
Great.
So yes, I had to quantify them. Yeah, you bet.
And David says, because that's my question. What does the next 180 days look like?
Yeah, that's an awesome question, David. So I feel pretty comfortable that we have so when I'm talking about that foundation, content, distribution, analyze and iterate, if I'm analyzing and iterating on the foundation, I feel really good there. So I'm like, okay, we have an awesome segment. We have people who are coming in saying, I want to talk to sales. They're specifically referencing the messaging. Like they're saying stuff. It's so cool, guys. They're saying stuff like, I feel like you get me. Like you articulated my problems better than I could. Like that's exactly what you want to hear as a marketer. So I feel like the foundation is super solid. So right now, what I want to do is try and scale some of those content and distribution efforts so that we can get that messaging in front of our ideal audience more often. So it looks like really specific. Our content right now is really just those features pages, the blog, and the blog is only organic. So I'm not putting any paid behind that right now. And then some video. So we'll do like micro clips from the podcast. And those, again, also are only organic. So the next 180 days will be like, can we put some paid efforts behind this? Is it worthwhile to put out some thought leadership ads on LinkedIn using the podcast clips? Is it worth it to revisit our Google ads? Most of the challenge there was not only were we not really getting a ton of conversions, I just didn't have the time to manage it. Like I'm the only one managing the channels right now as far as paid. So do we feel comfortable enough to like bring someone on and start doing Google ads again? So it's a more exciting time, I think, for the next 180 days because I feel so confident in the foundation.
That's great. That's great. So I think we're just about at time here. Thanks for the questions, Christine and David. And I think I'll just end with what is your big marketing hot take? Like, what do you think? Yeah, okay, she's got something in mind.
Oh, that's funny. Okay, let's see. I don't know if it's like a hot take. So I'll do like a hot take and then I'll do like a where I see marketing going. So my hot take is you're doing too much. Like we need to bring common sense back to marketing. So not enough people care about or spend enough time on the foundation. Like I just talked to you guys, like my entire job for the last 120-ish days has been building that foundation and making sure it works. So I don't think enough people spend time there. So bring common sense back. So stop, writing blogs just for high volume keywords. Stop, being on Google ads because everyone's on Google ads. Stop copying the same things your competitors are doing. Listen to the customers you have and go get more of those kinds of customers. Okay, so then my vision. So this is an interesting one, and it goes back to what we were kind of saying before. So I think this was before we hit record too.
Mhm.
Everyone has access to the technology now. So we're all in the stage where enough information has been scaled across the internet that we all know the tools that everyone is using. We know what ABM tools are out there. We know what data intent tools are out there. We know what prospecting tools are out there. So everyone's using the same tools. So now the major differentiator is going to be those foundational things. Who can resonate the best message with such a specific segment of customers that they come to you and say stuff like, I feel like you articulated my problems better than I could. So I think that's where I see B2B marketing going, is much less tactics driven and much more foundation driven.
Love that. Love that.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more. Excellent end to this. Just want
Awesome.
to say thank you again for joining us today, Mary. You've been great, and thank you to the members who are here today and anyone who watches this recording afterwards. Sorry, there's a plane flying over. Uh, we'll thanks again, and we'll talk soon.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Brian. This was a blast.
Yeah, thanks. Bye, everyone.